Hello, thank you so much. Hello, thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live Streaming. This is Atsushi, and this is Thursday night. Okay, perfect. I checked the audio, so everything is good, I guess. So this is the live streaming where I talk about Sashiko while doing the Sashiko stitching. There will be not much going on in front of the camera. It is not a tutorial, it's not a lecture, it's not a workshop. So it's more like a radio you can listen to while you're doing Sashiko stitching. So if you can bring some of your stuff to stitch on, that'd be great. The whole purpose of this live streaming is to create a place for anybody to get together to stitch together. We call it ibasho. At the same time, when I get a question about Sashiko stories, culture, Japanese mindset, whatever those things that does not require me to stop stitching, I am happy to answer those questions. So, well, few announcements. I hope you're having a very good evening, and I do have a few announcements. One announcement is that I do have several workshops coming in 2024 and 2025. Sorry, there's no workshop coming in 2024 anymore. So I don't have any plans for the workshop in 2024. And it's probably not gonna happen. There may be a chance that I may be doing it in New York in December. But most likely I'm not gonna be doing anything in 2024. So for the in-person workshop, please check the description area for the link, and there should be a link for the in-person workshop scheduled in 2025. One in February, one in March, and there should be a link to register that. Online class is always available, but sometimes in-person workshops are rare opportunities for me to be able to show and personalize my teaching to you. So please consider joining one of those. And second announcement is that I probably most likely to be able to offer the Japan tour in 2025 as well. The Japan tour, Sashiko Japan Tour 2024 is all booked, and we will leave actually in less than 2 months. So that will not be available, but I will have another Sashiko tour in 2025, probably in October, so about a year from now. And I plan to send out the emails sometimes next week about when exactly that would be good for those who are on the waiting list. So if you'd like to be on the waiting list, please check the description on this live streaming, and then there should be a Google form to get that. And the details should be on the website as well. All right, so those are the two announcements. Thank you so much for coming, Lily-san, Shinobu-san, and Heather. I'll just switch the camera, so let me just change that. Okay. Yep. I brought some topics today as well, but at the same time, let me start stitching a little bit so that we can be on the rhythm together. Yep. It is getting cold here. It was hot yesterday, not yesterday, last week. I remember I was talking about sweating last week. Didn't I? I think I was talking about sweating the hand. Today is quite kind of cold. There's no fall. I kind of like fall, but I think it's getting to the winter already. Just a second. I think the salt is another thing. Yep. Let me find where I stopped doing that last time. It's really not a best idea to start stitching by looking for where you stopped last time, the previous time. So be smart on this. You shouldn't be doing this. Well. Well is the one to do that. Okay. Yo. Yeah, it is. It is the salt. I think it's this. Wow. Just a second. What is it? Okay, that's good. That's good. Live streaming itself is kind of good for my health, I guess, because my temperature goes up. A few minutes ago, I said it's getting cold, but right now, stitching and talking makes my body temperature pretty high, so I'm really hot all of a sudden. That makes sense. I don't know why. Stitching itself shouldn't be like the exercise, but talking and stitching in the second language is probably a lot of brain work. Well, I hope I'm not using too much brain in stitching because that's not what I want to share, but that's why my hands are sweating again. Or probably something I ate at night. Well. So I went to the Barnes and Noble last weekend to get some of the books for my daughter, and I kind of stopped by for the craft section to see what is kind of current trend, and I found some books about visible mending, and some of them mentioned about Sashiko. And in those books, I found a phrase saying that they can learn what Sashiko is from surviving sample. And I kind of Google what surviving sample is. It is the samples, or it's the piece, it's like an actual tangible things that survived, and we can use as the sample to learn from. And while I was reading that, it is very true that we can learn a lot of things from surviving samples, and it is true that there are quite many surviving samples left in Sashiko to learn from. Not so available to public because there are not that much museum carrying that, but there are people who have those samples, and when they open their collections or when they publish books, when they make catalogs, those can be a very good surviving samples. At the same time, I realized that if they are talking about surviving samples, I wonder why they don't mention about living samples. And that goes to my Instagram post today, but Sashiko has changed a lot, and they sometimes explain the history behind it. But it's all about learning from the past. And I'm not minimizing the importance of learning from the past, but it seems like where is it's not dead yet. It sounds like another word I might not be able to say, that archaeology for a culture that is no longer available to connect with, like the Druid or something. Maybe so. Let me just check that. I just want to make sure that I understand the word correctly, so I will not say something stupid. Uh, it's not a subject to study, to be honest. Archaeology or like learning something from it has to be academic, right? And I think Sashiko is not really is the academic. If when it becomes like academic, it goes something else. It's not good or bad thing. It's just it's too ordinary for us. Sashiko is very ordinary, so and the good analogy I often use, not I don't know if it's good or not, but pizza or mac and cheese, those are the common things today, right? So we can get the mac and cheese anywhere, technically speaking, and you can make it, technically speaking. But there are many people who can make that mac and cheese. Sometimes some people may make it from the scratch, so they can probably make it from the just cheese. Instead of making instant mac and cheese, some of them may be able to make it from the cheese itself. And somewhere outside of this culture, people are talking about the mainstream of mac and cheese is using the powder, and we can learn a lot from the history. We can learn a lot about mac and cheese that they used the real cheese back then. And you may wonder, why don't they use the real cheese today? Is it too difficult to get it, or is it too like what is the purpose? Why do they ignore that? The good thing is that there are still bookstores to visit with a craft book. I think today's topic is there. So books are great, and books are very good. At the same time, it depends on the author or depends on the contents. They may be focusing on too much on the past. So some people really think that Sashiko existed in the past. It's not like, for example, what I'm doing today right now may not be considered a Sashiko much. Instead, they may be saying like visible mending in Sashiko. So that's one change in this culture, in this practice. So change itself is fine, but they might not be researching enough, or we did not speak up enough. I still don't know why, but it's not dead yet. It may be dead soon, but I felt quite strange about it when they kept saying that living sample, living sample, living sample, because living sample itself is it's not about good or bad. It's just, it is. We need a living sample. At the same time, by focusing on the living sample too much, they might be kind of not ignoring, how can I say that, minimizing the possibility of keeping it alive. And it can be just, not knowing that they existed. At the same time, over the internet, we can Google a lot of things. So I think that people are still, they can learn that Sashiko is still a living thing. Some people say that the authentic boro is impossible to make. It is impossible to make tomorrow, today or tomorrow, if I want to make the authentic boro today. But it is possible to make authentic boro when they understand what boro really is. It may take some time, but it's gonna be authentic. We have to define what authentic is. But following the definition of Boro, what Boro was, it is possible to make those things. Same as Sashiko too. For some reason, like traditional, we call. I don't call this Sashiko as traditional, but some people call what I do as the traditional Sashiko. It may be, but I don't consider it traditional too much. And as there are quite many Sashiko artisans in Japan who enjoy this kind of Sashiko, so it's really not, again, dead yet. And I don't want them to make us dead. I was pretty quiet until 2026. That doesn't mean that we didn't exist. So I think that's what is going on in many cultures. The aspect the aspect that those authors or teachers, someone with power found, will be highlighted, spotlighted in that one practice. And because they cannot recreate some of those surviving samples, they jump onto the sort of conclusion that we can learn from those living samples. And some culture may be like that. Some culture may have lost everything completely. So in those cases, that's probably the only one way to learn from. And if that's old enough, and if that's big enough, some may just jump into the academic to study that as the archaeology. But Sashiko is still living. And I hope that what I'm sharing is the actual proof it's still living. Well, I'm still living here, right? So it's not even like a sample. So it is almost a fact. So in November 15th to 18th, as my mother Keiko will have the exhibition in Tokyo nearby Tsukishima. Not nearby, in Tsukishima area. It's a quite small exhibition. It's very small gallery. Has the cafe in it, so it's very small exhibition. At the same time, that will be the opportunity for anyone to see or touch what we actually make. And I believe that what we make is not gonna be exactly the same as those living samples, but I think we can. It's not a comparison which is better or not, but I believe that what we make can be as good as those things. Well, that's what we are that's the reason we keep speaking up. We can still make those things. So if you happen to be in Japan, I will start advertising the exhibition soon. Well, I probably did already yesterday or day before yesterday on the Instagram. You will see you'll see the flyer many times from now on. So that'll be a great opportunity for you to see as well as touch it. One of the things we like to encourage is for the visitors to touch it. It's not really the art behind the glass, so I hope that many people can touch it. I hope you will share some footage from here exhibition. Yes, I will. I will try to share as many photos as possible. I will be leading the tour as well, so I won't be able to make catalog. Well, we will make catalog when we have more than, let's say, 30 pieces or something that we can be exhibiting. As of now, we don't have 30 jackets yet. Do we have 30 of those? But yeah, as many photos as possible. That's kind of sad that I don't feel sad when Japanese said that it's past, because it's the kind of perspective difference. If one think that it's the past, I don't think I should even comment on that. We may disagree, and it's okay to disagree. But when it is done outside of Japan without including any of Japanese people who are actually stitching today, I felt quite sad that culture can be twisted. Like if some teachers or masters or whatever you call it in English decided to make some of Sashiko as the past, although they were still practiced in Japan, then they are changing the like flow. And that I don't really appreciate, or not even angry, just that's very misleading. And when it's book, some people believe that the book is always right. And the book is often right, but it's not fair. That's probably what I feel like. But from now on, I will keep speaking up. So I hope thing will change. So Sashiko can be done by anybody else. Like anybody can do Sashiko. It's just purely stitching. So anybody can do any kind of Sashiko for that matter when they spend a lot of time. But the jacket, the Keiko's jacket, it's pretty unique. Just a second, okay. Still thinking how to do it. Someone that loves Sashiko would also eventually research online and most likely find you. Yeah, that's really nice of you to say that. Well, that's the whole reason that I keep still doing it. If I have no hopes on that, and the whole purpose of this live streaming is to leave something behind, just in case somebody may want to look up later on and then find out something which is not introduced in English much yet. So, but please don't misunderstand. One thing I really like to clarify is that what I do is a Sashiko, not the Sashiko. So what I do is very truth, right? I mean, what I'm doing is what I'm doing. So this is my hands. Those are my hands. It's not somebody's hands, and I'm not talking to the mic separately. I am talking while stitching. So it is this Sashiko we practiced and we practice today. So it is one fact, one truth. At the same time, there are many, many, many other Sashiko which are also truth. It's just not the style that we practice. So the kind of clear line, not a clear line, it's not a clear. A line that I can often draw is that how long has it been practiced, and if they can identify the upstream or not. And that upstream has to be Japanese too. So if they can kind of satisfy those two things, like, if they just started doing Sashiko a month ago, it is truth. It is very much truth for them. At the same time, it's really not the traditions. It's a great approach, but it's not, long enough to call it the culture. And if I say like decades, well, if one practice for decades, that can be a culture too. And that's one way to look at it. But I think what I like to say, what I'm trying to say is that it's not always one answer by one person. In this case, the answers or the description written in books are their best effort to describe what it is. And when the persons are decent, they will research it. But if they have different purpose in writing books, such as increasing their sales and being popular, then they can exclude. That can be more like intentional to get what they want. So I am a bookworm, so I like to say that books are always right. But when it comes to Sashiko, because I'm one of those who actually practice, not always right. That's kind of sad, but there's no such a thing as a one-stop for all for this kind of practice. So if that is the kind of description of the book, that's already wrong. You don't want to say that Domino pizza is the only pizza in the world. Not that I don't like Domino. I like Domino, but I couldn't afford Domino when I was in college, so I kept eating Little Scissors. So that can be a memory. That can be well, I don't know if Little Scissors can be the pizza. It really depends on the preference, but what was that expensive pizza chain? Joe, starting with J. Not a Jimmy Jones. Come on. Johnson? Not a Johnson. We had several pizza delivery store in the college town I was living. And back then, Little Scissors had like a $5 pizza. I don't know if they still offer that, but $5 for like a large pizza was pretty good deal. Not a good deal, pretty like a savior for the college kid who didn't have much money. Papa John's, there we go. Thank you. Yes. So the Papa John's was like not right next to, but there was very close. But we kind of couldn't afford it back then. I couldn't afford it back then. But we don't want to define one pizza joint as the answer. But of course, pizza joint wants to define their pizza is the only pizza. So it's more like a marketing, and that's something I have to learn. We all have to learn as the marketing strategies. But at the same time, when it is done in English, talking about Japanese culture, I think it's kind of unfair to do that. Well, I cannot think of the good analogy with pizza right now, but so that's kind of the line between the authenticity and there's so many Sashiko's answers. One's answer may be somebody's don't do list, but that's okay. That's what it is. You still don't understand that New York pizza is the only real pizza. I still don't. I still don't. I don't know what real pizza is. I I went to Michigan for the school, right? Like university. Not U of M or Michigan State. But I was kind of close to Chicago. Not a close, but it's close enough to travel often. And I still remember the first time I had a deep dish pizza, saying like this is the real pizza in the US. Like I was pretty shocked. Wow. So what was I eating in Japan was not pizza. So I do have a very good, strong kind of experience there. I don't know if though Chicago people in Chicago really thinks that the Chicago pizza is the authentic pizza. I would like to really ask that question. Michigan, my home state. Oh, well, Sue. You have your Sue. Well, that's what I like about you. So that's the mindset. That's the mindset that I have to understand. And that's the mindset very important to be in this country. Although I know Sue is joking, but part of her is not joking too. So that's the good point. Don't worry, some folks think that deep dish pizza isn't pizza either. I don't. Yes, so I'm talking about just the non-chain restaurant like Domino's or. But there are a bunch of I shouldn't see. This is not the best topic to bring. Um, somebody is going to be unhappy, so I don't like this kind of discussion. But well, I should have brought this pizza example first. So I would like to try really the handmade non-pizza family-owned pizza style, not a pizza style, family-owned pizza store. Let me read it out. Well, probably I will just let it slip. I may not be able to catch the comments. I want corn to catch on more as the topping in the US. Corn. So when it come to cultural appropriation, Japan appropriate the culture of pizza a lot, and we are kind of I don't know if it's a cultural appropriation, but that's a lot of thing. We put a lot of interesting things on the topping. So I recommend if you have a chance to go to Japan, try Domino's, try something else. Try the good, delivery pizza is fine. You may find that delivery pizza while traveling to Japan, what the heck, we can get better place, better meal, which is true. You can probably find better deal, better cheap food. But like seafood mix or like corn mayo, those are the pizza that I cannot find in the US at this moment. I can make myself, but I don't think we have it somewhere. And of course, as Sue said, that pizza in Italy is completely different. And I do have a student, Japanese student, who lives in Italy. So she knows everything about it. Not everything, but she can mention that what I think she's sleeping because in Italy it's in the morning. But my point is though, there's so many perspective, right? We call it preference and perspective. If we define one pizza as the answer, we will have somebody left behind. So what I want to do is that I do not want to leave anybody left behind, especially if they are Japanese. I don't know which pizza is actually the pizza. It's not me who decided. It's based on your preference and where you come from. Your culture, your preference will define that. But I just don't want anything to be left behind. If you like my pizza, go ahead. I am happy to share. You can learn, you can, enjoy it. But it does not mean that other sashikos are not sashiko, other pizzas are wrong. But unfortunately, those who did not grow up with those pizza are saying that there are only one type of pizza. And without that specific topping, specific style, it's not a pizza. So this is the store that you can learn all about American pizza. Well, there's no such a thing as one stop for all for that. And for the kind of academic side, it's kind of silly to go into academics saying that which topping had more popularities, or 200 years from now, it might be a big academics, but as of now, it's just a preference. Are there any current or historical figures in Sashiko culture that you could highlight on my channel someday? What do you mean by historical figures? Like people? Okay, Heather and Sue, you agreed on that. What is wrong with the dessert pizza? Like pizza dough and then whipped cream and then strawberries kind of thing? That's the wrong pizza we discussed. Famous artist or whatnot. I will try. I will try to do that. But at the same time, I don't do it for two reasons. One, if I don't know them, I do not want to misrepresent them. So I would like to be careful as possible. Second, there are people that I consider them as historical or like a legendary person. They don't like to be filmed. So I do have information, I do have stories, but they are not so passionate about being introduced. So I am in the process of convincing them somehow. They don't want to be on this camera, so instead of filming them or introducing them to the general public, I decided to bring them to Japan so that they can meet. They don't mind meeting people, but speaking on the camera is a little bit different story. And on top of that, those are two reasons. And then one other thing is that they don't speak English, so I kind of have to translate everything. And that's a lot of work. Yeah, it's another job, another project. But one day, one day. But yeah, based on the book, that might be a good idea to do that. There are some people who published the book. They are about 4, 5, 6 that I can think of with the books published around 50 years ago, 40 years ago. So I can introduce them, but I would like to kind of learn them more. Like my mom can be one of those, I guess. Keiko is one of those, but wait, she does not like to be on that. Like the art in the history. That's the point. Like, art is something they can be proud of. At least 30 years ago, 20 years ago, Sashiko was not something they were proud of. Of course, it depends on the people who you ask to, but not many people were proud of that. So, for example, Boro is another very good example of kind of like a twisted into the Western, or probably somebody with a choice is twisting the culture of not having a choice. It doesn't have to be Western, it can be anywhere, but the culture with wealth, with choice, are twisting the culture which they didn't have. So some people may think that Boro is cool, but those who made Boro didn't think it's cool. So they, happened to leave those Boro behind, but they did not plan to. I don't know if they even wanted to be displayed that. I mean, of course, it's not, it's a history. It's a very important historical pieces so we can learn from. But when we imagine their lifestyle, I don't know if that's I don't know if we are following what they were thinking. You could hire my friend Colleen to translate. She lives in Fukuoka. I would be able to, but some Japanese, I don't understand their Japanese. So some Japanese, like I have to record it and I have to listen over and over because of the dialect. Dialect. I think that's the word for that. So when I I was living in the northern part of Japan right after the big tsunami in 2022, in 2011. I did not understand half of what they were saying in the first few weeks. Once you get it, once I kind of get used to that rhythm, and then, some of the reposition, at the end, I was okay. But the first, I could not understand what they were saying, so it is quite a lot of work. But I agree, somebody has to do that, especially if our goal is to preserve this culture. That kind of information is supposed to be left behind. It looks like it is an oral tradition, though. It is oral tradition as well as like a more like domestic tradition. So let's say that I introduce myself as the person who was born in Sashiko family, right? So when I say Sashiko family, it means that my family tried to make Sashiko as more like an industry so that they can somewhat make Sashiko sustainable. In order to make one practice to make it somewhat sustainable, one option is to make it like a business like. So you can support the suppliers, you can support the whole supply chains. So for that perspective, for that angle, what we did was very unique as well as a little bit off the road. So my ancestor was doing Sashiko for the actual purpose of Sashiko, but after 50 years ago in Japan already, they were very wealthy. So if they were stitching for the actual Sashiko's purpose, which is to go through the winter, they probably should have got different job. So I am from the kind of different kind of angle, as well as because of that I don't want to say industrialized Sashiko, but because of that structures that my grandma made, we have a lot left, which is almost oral, because they did not like writing down. They really hated to be copied, which I'm kind of breaking everything they protected. But again, this is something I have to do anyway. So they did not really leave much documents. It was all, like not all, mainly oral. But because of that kind of change from the domestic practice to the somewhat commercialized practice, I have stories to share. But in most cases, it is quite domestic. And which is okay, but at the same time, they don't find it significant. And we're not the only family who tried to do that, who revived that. So there are other teachers, there are others. But I don't know if they have the hair in that practice. At least I don't know the hair. Well, I might be just the noisy one, but that's something I have to kind of spend my life on somehow at some point. I have to be in Japan. I have to do that somewhat. In Japan, traveling everywhere, ideally living with them to learn that. Without that, it's not gonna happen. And I can do it if I sacrifice my family, but sacrificing the family itself is really against the Sashiko's rule. That's the one rule that I cannot sacrifice, because if I focus on the art perspective of Sashiko with sacrificing the family, that's kind of going against the Sashiko's principle. I think that's why one of the reasons I do not like to say Sashiko is art is that in Japan, an artist can be translated into somebody eccentric, somebody a little crazy, somebody who is not I don't want to say normal, but who doesn't do the normal stuff. They often do not take care of the family. They go to the gambling, they spend all the money drinking. Those are the kind of impression of the artist in Japan, like extraordinary people. So going back to the home and then spending time every night with the family, while talking, enjoying the family meals, waking up every morning, enjoying the cup of coffee. Those are not the stereotype figure of artist. But without that, if a Sashiko practitioner decided to give up everything to pursue the success, that's not already Sashiko. That's a different thing. That's why I don't teach so often I can probably teach every month. Or probably every 2 weeks if I try my best. But that will ruin my rhythm. And for example, if my family find that I am not there enough, then that's the time I have to balance it. It does not have to be the family. It has to be someone who they care. Like if you don't have a family, you may have somebody who you care for. It can be your friend, spouse. Well, spouse can be the family, but it doesn't have to be like the family figure of, parents and kids. It doesn't have to be that. But ultimately speaking, stitching for oneself is not the principle of Sashiko. I'm not saying that if you stitch for yourself, it's not Sashiko. I'm not saying that. You can, of course, stitch for yourself because that's the choice we have. But if I stitch to prove that I am somebody, and if I stitch for the purpose of me being the artist so that I can get a lot of fame, that's not the Sashiko I received. So Sashiko itself is for somebody else. And that's why I think the Minge, the Japanese folk art, can be a good kind of not a mix, but good partner. They can align, they can associate each other pretty well, because Minge itself is also not for themselves as the art. The great translation of the Minge is the art without heroes. So the maker does not try to be the only hero. They, or many people who are part of that craft. So everybody was a hero, but the production itself was not for somebody's one specific person's fame. So those are something I like to and that's the reason that I do not particularly like to call Sashiko art. Art is for oneself a lot. It's the way to express one's feeling using the artistic skill. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ali. 何これちょっと待って。なんでやり直し。少々お待ちを。I made a knot, which I'm supposed to not do. It happens. I think I fixed it. I remember learning embroidery from my grandmother, but it was mainly by watching. The elder don't believe in elaborate explanation. No, that's how I got Sashiko too. Nobody taught me. I teach right now, and I tried my best to kind of be able to teach the essence in 6 hours. But that's like, nobody has done that to me. It's more like my condensing my suffering into 6 hours. And so many people suffer in my workshop. They might find it quite uncomfortable, but that's because I'm kind of not skipping, but I'm condensing the essence into one workshop. I hope this makes sense a little bit. So the Sashiko introduced in English is not wrong, but because of the it is definitely missing the part that I said today. Because they think that Sashiko is sort of the art. They teach Sashiko as the art. So, and then the feeling behind it, the story behind it, are not well explained. That some of these Sashiko artisans are not willing to be called Sashiko artist because of those few reasons. And yeah, the kind of, it doesn't have to be family. Family is very easy to think of when you think of somebody you care for the most. But it doesn't even have to be the person for that matter. It can be your, dog or cat if that's what you care for. But if you stitch for somebody else, that's a very good, one element of doing the authentic Sashiko. I don't know what authentic is, but I think it's authentic. Well, so art, Sashiko as the art is one ramification of Sashiko, and I'm not denying it. It is a one approach, but it's not only that. That's why it's difficult. It's quite difficult. Well, so the exhibition that we will have in Japan, Tokyo for the November is a good opportunity. If you speak Japanese, it's going to be very good opportunity for you to talk to my mom. She will be there, so. That can be hard as with knitting for another person that doesn't understand the love and time put into the knitting. Yeah. So it is not only Sashiko's an obstacle that we are facing, it's more like handcraft. And I'm just speaking up from the perspective of Japanese who does not want it to be different by those who do not know anything about what Sashiko is. Well, I wouldn't say anything, but if they don't speak Japanese, they cannot understand the whole picture of Sashiko. I don't even understand the whole picture of Sashiko, but how can they do that if they don't speak Japanese? I'm not saying you have to learn Sashiko. I mean, I'm not saying you have to learn Japanese to enjoy Sashiko, but if they say that they know about a bigger picture of Sashiko, then language is quite important. So it is quite difficult. I may be doing something completely, I don't want to say wasteful, but maybe this may be a complete waste of time. But it's not me who define it is a waste of time or not. It's somebody who may be watching this few years, as long as Google survive, YouTube survive, this data will be, kept somewhere. Then I hope that somebody will listen to this and then, try to, even if it's lost, if we have some voice left, it can be revived. And voice itself is good, but also the video, like this kind of video, is also important. So it has to be very worthy person to stitch for these days. It's a very interesting sentence, and it's very true. It's very true. Then that I don't like that though. I think I'm trying to somewhat challenge those. That's what it is, kind of thing. Because it's true. I think I'm trying to fight back, if I were okay to say it. I think of gifts. Sorry, I think of gifts as me expressing myself to them. So if they destroy it, I'd not be happy about it. But it's because of the regard for our relationship, not the item. That's also interesting perspective too. But if I be honest, like here, if I be honest, I probably wouldn't care much what they do for. What I care is the kind of that's a very difficult. It may be very Japanese things to do, but we put ourselves into our stitching work. That's very true, and that's the contemporary thing, and that's why we care how the other handle those gifts. So, for example, this is sort of like a representing of me. So if somebody, handle it without care, you may be sad. I may be sad. I may not be happy for that. At the same time, that is already too focusing on the result and me. So the Sashiko I know and the Sashiko I kind of like to somewhat share is the stitching without me, without anybody for that matter. It's none. And I know I'm not making sense. I know this does not make sense. If I can speak Japanese here, I probably can explain better somehow, but no personality is a personality, and that's what. So Sashiko for somebody but nobody. Wow, that does not make any sense, but it is very, very true that we stitch for. We have so much me inside of it. I want to make it art. I want to make it that. But at the same time, that's not only perspective, and you probably will not understand today's like right now because I'm not explaining well, and there's a cultural difference between that. So it's the selflessness. Selflessness is a very good way to put it. But selflessness is already a sign that there is self. I don't want to go to this kind of philosophical discussion because I know I'm not making sense. So, like, kind of empty for that matter. Some of the Sashiko artisans I respect, even today, don't remember that they were stitching. Like let's say they stitch 8 hours a day. Those moments, I even have sometimes those moments that I don't like. The clock just goes around. So I started stitching at the 9 o'clock in the morning. When I realized it was like afternoon, I skipped lunch. I don't remember I had a lunch, but that skipped. It can be like focus. It can be like tripping. But that's one alternate. Knitters often define themselves as either process or product knitters. Process knitters knit to knit or to try new technique. Product knitters to make particular things in general. Um, my Sashiko as the family is the product Sashiko for that matter. But the Sashiko I learned from them is very much product and very much process. So in those like a dualism, either product or process, I am very process oriented. Like otherwise, I won't define Sashiko as the prayer. My definition of Sashiko is not a definition. The description I used for the core essence of Sashiko, not a core essence, the original form of Sashiko is the prayer. And prayer exists in the process. In this case, God, my brain's kind of smoking right now. And it's 10 o'clock, so I gotta go to sleep soon. I have a long day tomorrow, so. But it does not mean, please don't get me wrong, like if you focus on the product, that's fine. I'm not gonna say that product-oriented Sashiko is not the Sashiko. But also, that's not only Sashiko they are. And as Sue says that Sashiko in English, introduced in English, is quite product-oriented. Like our stitches can be even small, right? I never, like when I was stitching this, I can say never. I never cared about stitches size. It happened like that. I don't care. So it happened. Because I'm, thinking about something, talking about something. It is getting a little deep, and it's not but it doesn't get deep so much when I speak in English. That's the key. When I speak in Japanese, this topic does not get into very deep because the Japanese have this kind of mindset as our ordinary. Like we believed, and some people still believe that there are spirit in everything, and we are the culture accepting two religions in the same place, Shinto and Buddhism. Well, some people don't, including myself, don't define Shinto as the religion. Anyway, so there are a lot of cultural difference. So if you don't understand this, I don't understand if I'm explaining it well or not. So don't worry about it. Just please stick with it. One day you may get it something. So yeah, I know that I'm not doing a great job, but one day. I don't remember the first time I had needle and thread in hand. I stitched for the joy of the process. When I give a gift, that joy is what I'm sharing and releasing to the world. Yeah, that's really. That's close. But I guess they didn't even feel the joy when they released it. That was what it was. So sometimes people ask me like, what do you do with that Sashiko stitched fabric? My answer can be, I don't know. I did not start with that. So that's another reason that I don't like mixing Sashiko with Zen or other Buddhism term, because that's quite, risky to mix it. If the Sashiko is product oriented, that's a very risky thing to mix Sashiko with Zen or other terms that might come with the mindfulness. But even if one is doing the process oriented Sashiko, by introducing those Buddhist or mindfulness term, then it becomes the purpose. And then that ruins the whole purpose of focusing on the process. That's why it's really, really risky. I'm not gonna say it's wrong. It's very risky to mix it, and it's wrong to do it without knowing it. It can be pretty disrespectful too for those who may have done that. And I'm the one who's trying to understand both of those. So it's really, really, when we have to explain in verbal word, it's difficult, but it's not that complicated. It's quite simple. It's quite simple. It's just I don't know the word and logic to explain that, which is really unfortunate. But you know. So focusing on the process oriented only is already the sign of product oriented. So it's kind of like we have to be balancing that. Product, so-called the outcome of doing stitching. So joy of stitching is a very great way to enjoy stitching, but when the joy becomes the purpose of stitching, that is already the product of stitching. It's an intangible product, and there's of course tangible product, and that's a completely different thing. But we can of course focus on the intangible product focus. If one is focusing on process significantly, probably that outcome itself is also not the way to. So like return, prayer itself might not be a great translation, but when I ask for the return for the prayer, please give me something in the prayer, that is already that is already an action to get outcome. So I know I'm not explaining well. I'm so sorry. Sue, who wrote here, has been suffering from. We have talked a lot, and I'm sorry that I keep, torturing her with a lot of nonsense explanation. But she wrote it today saying that she finally understands the problem. I really appreciate it. I don't know which explanation triggered that, but it's not. I understand that it's not easy because we are different. I'm asking you to eat something fermented beans, natto. It's fermented. It's kind of spoiled for that matter. And we enjoy it. I love it. But you have to eat something spoiled. Would you eat it? It takes some time. My spouse, she's not Japanese, but she loves right now that. I think she can live just with that. But she hated for the first time. And I kind of keep saying that it's very difficult because it's Japanese, but it existed in many, many other cultures. I just don't know, and I shouldn't be speaking for them neither. Only things I can speak on behalf of, is the Japanese, and it's quite difficult to translate what I can explain in Japanese to English, and that's the lost in translation too. We have to mold what we say into the different mold. As the result, we have to cut some important part off. Sorry, we have to cut some insignificant part off when we translate. But those culture can exist in those insignificant part that I have to somewhat involve, and it's kind of making it so difficult. Okay. I gotta kind of stop doing that. It has been 15 minutes over. Okay. It was a very great discussion. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we have so many of those coming up. And those are the stitching that I will use for the Japan tour. We will make one like a friendly quilt together. Yeah, I still have 50 days to go, so I should be able to fix that. Not fix that. I should be able to complete that. But yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Let me just quickly read the comments if I missed something. Maybe not prayer, but a communing with. Yeah, it's kind of, I will watch this live streaming again, and then we'll try to um kind of see what I can do with my explanation. I talked for like 60 minutes, and then I'm not still feeling satisfied with my explanation. I try my best to answer that, but I know I'm not doing good job for that. I feel the way about my spinning too. I just kind of spin and end up with even yarn or singles. But I'm paying attention while only kind of being involved. So, okay, the way I said it makes it sounds like magic, but it's not. It's not. I don't think so. Stitching is like breathing to me. It is just part of me, and I like to share it when I can. Yeah, that's the kind of spirit for that. If I were to use that Robin's example, Sashiko is like breathing to me too, and somebody's farting in that room, so it's pretty. I want to breathe. I want to open the window so many other people can join the room. That might be a pretty bad. That might be a pretty bad analogy to say while I have my face on this channel. Well, I might get another dislike button, but it's like a mom who takes care of children without expecting return. That's a thank you. There we go. That's it. So it's unconditional love is probably a good way to say it, but it's not even love for that matter. It's just is. And I am explaining it as if it's something difficult, something complicated. And you may find it may sound like this is very Japanese things to do. I think it's something we had. And not that long time ago. We had that few generations ago. Probably TV was the big things to change that, but again, we had a time to stitch in front of TV with completely selfless, like brain dead. And that brain dead time can be a prayer for that matter to something else, like happy moment in front of the TV and fireplace and stitching and completely brainless. That's one way to enjoy Sashiko. With the internet, where you can get an answer that you want to listen or you want to read, it's all about productivities, speed, what is right and wrong. So you have to be, in order to be successful, you have to know the logic behind it. Programming is all about logic, in my understanding. You have to know the logic to make that programming. And a lot of things can be, like 99.9% of the things can be replicated in the programming, I guess. But there might be something that we used to do, yet we kind of forgot about. And that's Sashiko may exist in that something that I cannot explain well. Well, if you stitch in a rhythm, if you stitch like 6 hours nonstop in a rhythm, you may find that moment. It happens. Like a runner's high, it happens. Stitcher's high. And I think it happens in many other stitchery. Anyway, I gotta go. Thank you so much for coming to the Thursday night Sashiko live streaming. I wasn't planning to speak this much with my face out, but it happens. I will be back same time next week, Thursday night, and this was a fantastic discussion. I really appreciate it. I did not probably follow today's topic, but if you're watching this as the archive, please leave the comment as well so that I can bring your questions to the next live streaming. And I'll be stitching next week too. So I hope you have a good night if you're in the US, like in the American continent. And if you're in Japan or Asia, or I hope you have a good day. All right, have a good day. Bye bye. Good night.